Welcome to Real Talk Thursdays. This is where I'm going to share my story, my journey, all the circumstances, situations, and tools that I used to get to where I'm at today that made me who I am today. And maybe I can help somebody else out there that may be going through the same situation, maybe have the same scenarios, just by sharing my story. So each Real Talk Thursday is going to be a section and chapter of my life. So let's see what this chapter is all about today. Welcome. So glad that you were listening. I am coming at you kind of sleepy, a little worn out. I just got back from what I call a recharge trip, and I want to share this with you when it's fresh in my brain and just like the feelings are really raw. So we're going to take a little adventure together. Let me talk about that. So first of all, my recharge trip originally was going to be in Ross Lake. It was going to be 4 days of kayaking. There was going to be 6 of us, 4 days of kayaking, camping each night. And one of the hikes was going to be Desolation Peak, which is like around a 10-mile hike. And it's hard enough. It's a good hike, and it gets you to the top of these mountains that you can overlook and see the mountains in Canada. You can see the mountains in Washington. It's like amazing and awesome. And unfortunately, August is fire season up here in the Pacific Northwest, and there is a mountain right next to Ross Lake that is called Ruby Mountain, and it caught on fire the weekend prior to us having to go there. So it was no longer safe for us to be up there. 1, fires, 2, air quality, 3, I don't know, all the things get stuck and all that. So we pivoted. We decided, what are we going to do here? And we decided to pivot, and we pivoted to Canada. And for us, it's really easy. We can just drive up there and drive across the border. So 4 of us out of the 6 decided to pivot, and we were going to take a girls' weekend up. And our plan was, there's wineries up there. We were going to camp by a river. We found a campsite, pivoted to BC. We were going to hike up Lindeman Peak, which is a peak up by Chilliwack area in BC. And then, we were going to probably have a river or a lake day the next day, and then swoop home on Monday. So still 4 days, right? So we leave on Friday. I'm laughing because I know what all the shenanigans that it entailed, but I'm not going to give you all the details because it's my girls' weekend, but I am going to give you just the gist so you can have an idea of what a recharge trip is kind of like and what I like to do with it. And then I'm going to give you my Saturday, which was one of the most scariest experiences on a mountain that I've ever had and that I had to work through, and give you all the juicy details with that. So Friday was driving up there, going out to lunch. We went to this cute winery, had an amazing server that we were flipping shit, and she was giving it right back to us. It was so much fun. Laughs, all the things, waiting for all of us to get up there and meet at the campground, sitting by the river, having a couple drinks as the sun goes down when it's like totally warm out still. And just like laughing and talking and like total girls trip, like what you would think would be like a total girls trip was Friday. We get to bed a little bit late because we're having too much fun, of course, right? The next morning we needed to get up early, and we needed to get on the mountain. Now, when you hike a peak like Lindeman Peak, you go to the trailhead between 6 and 8 in the morning. Because even though, let me paint this picture for you. Lindeman Peak is, first of all, in the Canadian mountain range, which is different than ours. When I say ours, I mean Pacific Northwest. To me, I'm from a mountainous region, but I feel like there's more mountains, there's more wilderness in BC than there is in the Pacific Northwest. That means more animals. That means like we don't really have, they're reintroducing grizzlies to our area, but we don't really have that many grizzlies here, okay? But in Canada, there's a lot, and there's certain areas where there's more. And I'm a person, I love being outdoors, I love hiking, and I love all the things, but I have this thing about bears. I don't know why. I've had it forever, and I have to work through it every time I go outside. Does that keep me from doing that? No. But I know that. So in my head, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's probably grizzlies up here. Am I going to see one? Probably not. But is it going to cross my mind a few times? Probably, right? Lindeman Peak is round trip from Trailhead up to Peak to Trailhead is 12 miles. Now, All Trails says 10, but we all know you got to add a little bit of mileage and some elevation gain because for some reason it's off every time. Anybody that hikes knows that. All Trails gives you the gist, and then you have to add, right? So 12 miles up to Peak and back. And so when you think about it, okay, so that's like 6 miles up. When you're hiking 6 miles, depending on the terrain, it depends on your time. So if you're hiking something that's flatter, it's going to be way quicker than if you're hiking something that has elevation gain that's pretty steep. And it depends on if you're on ground, if you're on boulders, if you're on moving rocks, if you're on, mountains have many different terrains that you're crossing. It's not all the same. It might be nice trail in the beginning, and then you're really getting into it towards the end, right? Now, it's going to be a long day. You're not going to get back until after dinner time, depending on how the terrain is, depending on what it's like. But it's usually if you start between 6 and 8, you are ending between 6 and 8. Like it's a 12-hour day because of how much you're pushing yourself and all the things, right? Pace and all that jazz. So we get up the next morning and we're real slow. Like we're just real slow, like trying to get to the trailhead. We get to the trailhead at like 10:30 in the morning. And so we're like, okay, we can still do this. We're going to do it. We're going to pick up the pace on the flatter parts, la-ti-da. So we're on this trail and we're rocking it and we're going and we're like going through these woods, going through all these woods. It's kind of flatter. Parts of it is water, parts of it are rock, but it's not too bad. We have to go across these big, it looks like washouts, like maybe where during the winter time or when the snow melts, there's these big, huge, like river beds that are dried up, but maybe there is water there in a different season, but it was dried up. Now, we figured out that somebody had marked this trail with tags, whether they were pink, yellow, whatever, but they were like these like ribbon tags that would mark so you could find the trail on the other side versus having to like pull out your navigation, which we did at times anyway, and or searching for the trail and all the things that you do when you're up there. So we go and we start seeing these little tags that like kind of help us, and so then we're going along these trails. And we come to this big opening, and there's this really sweet waterfall that's coming down that we were like, oh my gosh, this would be so cool to hang out at for a little bit. And this is like, I don't know, 2 miles-ish in. And then we have to go up then we find that where the trail goes back up, and it goes up, and it's really steep at this one point for a little bit. And we're heading up this thing, and we're making good time as far as speed and all that stuff. And we're going up this steep part. I get 3/4 of the way up this steep part, and I'm lightheaded. And when I mean lightheaded, I mean, I'm talking like the blackness is closing in, the spottiness, all the things. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to pass out on this mountain. And then all the things started running through my head. Did I drink enough water? And I'm like, I've already had, like, to prep, I drank 1 liter, maybe even 2 liters prior to even going on the mountain. I had 2 liters of water with me. I had a big breakfast. I'm like, what is going on with me? And I could not, it was kind of warm. It was probably in the 80s, but up there it's a little cooler, right? So I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, okay, let me sit down for a second. So I sit down for a second. Two of my group is peeled off because they were ahead of us. And one person was with me. And I'm sitting down for a second, and I'm like, okay, let me try again. So then I get back up and I start trying again, and it sets in worse. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I pass out, let me paint this picture for y'all. If I passed out on this side of how steep this was and I fell forward, I would have rolled down the side of a mountain, bouncing off of trees, like, Plinko back in the day where you put the piece in and it bounces off all the pins to get to the bottom. That would have been me if I would have passed out for a whole, I don't even know, 1/4 mile, maybe. That's how steep it was. And I was like, so I turned around with my back towards the mountain, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I lowered my head in between my legs. I'm like, this is not going away. Like, this is not stopping. I take a drink of water. My mouth was so dry, I could eat nothing. Like, I could not even swallow it because my mouth was so dry. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Do I need calories? Do I need water? Do I need to get my heart rate back down? Which it wasn't extremely high. I've done hard workouts before and have had it higher. So I didn't know what was going on. It could have been just all the stars aligned. Like, it had been hot, we went to bed late. Maybe I didn't have enough water. Maybe I didn't have enough calories. I'm not really sure. It's just never happened to me before on the mountain. So I'm sitting there for a few more minutes. It doesn't go away. And so I tell my partner that was with me, I said, go ahead. I'm going to just stay here for a little bit longer. You can catch up to them. Let them know, that I'm coming. If you don't see me in X amount of time, I'm not coming, right? Just because I didn't know what this was going to entail. And I was freaked out that I was going to pass out on the side of a mountain when then you have to get search and rescue. Like, it's the whole 9 yards, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, it'll probably be 10 minutes. I'll catch up, whatever. It took me almost an hour to drink enough water, have enough calories to not feel like I was going to pass out. I was super shaky. Like, when you go work out somewhere and you work these muscles really good and, you try to like lift stuff and you're all like jello-y. That's how I was, but my whole body was like that. It was crazy. I've never had that before. So I ate a little bit more, drank some more water. I probably waited like 15, 20 more minutes. And I'm like, I'm not sitting here. This was at noon, okay? So I'm not going to sit here for 8 hours by myself. And mind you, when you're on a mountain, depending on the mountain, sometimes you have stingy things. What do I mean by that? Stingy bugs. There could be hornets, there could be wasps, there could be bees, there could be flies that bite you, there could be mosquitoes, there's like all kinds of things. And you don't really notice them when you're hiking because you're moving and they might fly around you, but then they leave you alone. When you're a sitting duck, you are breakfast, lunch, or dinner, my friend. You are their feast and they are coming at you. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm about done with this because it was insane. Like, the horseflies were insane. I can't even tell you how many horsefly bites I have, by the way. But it was crazy. So I start heading back up the mountain. I look at the time. I had been sitting there for an hour and a half. So now it's 1:30. That's how long it took me to recover, which is freaking bananas. They were probably 2.5 miles ahead of me at this point, which is way far. Do I know where the trail is? By the tags, we'll see what I can do. I'm not a dumbass. Like, I'm not just going to go, going off into a mountain where I don't know where I'm going, especially when I'm separated from my group and they have no way of knowing where I am or what's going on, right? So I have to be smart about this. Do I have enough water? Do I have enough snacks? Do I have enough all the things? Because I just had to drink a bunch of water and eat, right? So I had to think about all this stuff and I'm like, I'm going to just go up this mountain and I'm going to try to catch up to him. And if I can't, I'll meet up with them at some point. And then everything will be fine and I'll hike out with them. So I start going back up and I felt completely fine. It was so irritating to me. It was like, what was that? So I felt fine. Like, yeah, I was still a little bit shaky and I was weaker, but I was fine. I wasn't, black. The blackness wasn't coming in. The spottiness wasn't coming in. The almost passing out wasn't coming in. Oh, I forgot to mention that I threw up because of all of this also. So that was really fun, amongst other things on the mountain that you have to do, which is also fun. And once my body settled, it was like, okay, now I'm ready. It was weird. It was like I had to do all this weird purging first and then be like, okay, go, So I'm going up the side of the mountain and then I see all the tags and stuff. And I was like so happy because I'm like, I can totally navigate this trail by these tags. This is awesome. I don't have to try to get navigation, all this stuff. I don't have to do any of that because it's pretty readable. So I'm going up and I don't even know how many more miles I did, but I go all the way to this boulder field. And when you're hiking on a mountain, trails are pretty easy to see. They look like trails. But when it was questionable, you could look up into the trees and you could see these tags and it was like overly tagged. At first we were like, why is this overly tagged? This is insane. But it made sense as the day went on. when you get exhausted on a mountain, sometimes, things get a little cuckoo lulu and you got to make sure that you know where you're going. Or if it's dark, those tags are going to stand out so you can get out of the mountain, okay? Because yes, sometimes when you do long hikes, you hike out in the darkness. It's a thing. Or maybe start in the morning in the darkness, depending on what you're summiting or where you're going or how this mountain looks, right? So I'm navigating along and I'm just going by myself. And it was so awesome to me to sit there and feel and be like, I am literally in the Canadian frickin' mountains by myself. Like, no, I'm not by myself because my friends are with me on the same mountain, but there's so many miles ahead, I am alone. And I was okay with that. Like, I was okay with that. It was like, there was no nervousness. There was no worry. There was no nothing. There was total confidence and support in myself of, I know what the hell I'm doing. And I know if I get to a point where I don't, I'm not a dumbass and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna push my luck, if you will, and end up in a bad situation, with my friends. So I get to this boulder field and I'm walking around where this boulder field is. And I'm like, where the hell is the trail? Because there is no trail in a boulder field. When you're in the trees and stuff, it's marked. You can see the trail. You can be like, oh, this is a trail. This is not a trail. It's pretty clear when you're on something like that where a trail is, unless there's a break. Like those washouts I was talking about, I had to go through a couple more of those washouts. So I had to look across the washout and I had to go across that, find the marker, and then start on the trail, or go up and down the side until I find the trail and then go into the trail, which is fine. That was the easy part. The hard part is when there's no trail, when there's boulder field. So you can't guess where the trail is, because you can go off. I could be thinking the trail goes to the right or left or straight, whatever. And I could be going in a completely different direction because the trail may pick up after this small boulder field. It may pick up somewhere. But if I pick the wrong direction, I'm never going to find that trail. Okay? So I'm walking around and I go up a couple boulders and I'm going a little bit a ways. And I'm like, you know what? I am not feeling that this is a good idea for me just to be bouldering and continuing this hike like this when I do not know where my people are. And we have this call that we do to see if they can even hear you. And I was making the call and I had no response whatsoever back. And so I was like, they are way too far ahead. They have no idea that I'm even here. They don't know that I'm following them. They don't know that I'm coming. They don't know anything. They don't know. Meanwhile, I don't know how far away they are. I don't know, I don't know where they're at on the mountain at this point, right? So at this time, it's 3:30, 4 o'clock. It's 3:30, 4 o'clock when I'm trying to navigate this boulder field. And I do some of it, but I do it enough to where I can still see my marker to get me back on the trail, to get me back to where I was at. And I'm like, okay, so I knew where to go from there. And I'm scanning, looking. And I was like, I don't feel in my gut was I don't feel right about this. I feel like if I push this, I'm going to freaking get lost or, end up really hurting myself or something crazy to where I'm alone, yes, I'm alone, but really being alone and then not knowing if my friends would be passing me by. And this is a peak that not very many people do. There was a few cars at the trailhead, but it's not it's not a people-y hike. This is wilderness hike. Okay. Now I sit there and decide, and remember, when you stop, all the things, right? All the things come around you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am getting eaten alive again. And I probably sat there for a good 30 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here for 30 minutes. And at this point, it's 4:30. And so I'm like, okay, so 4:30, now what? And I'm like, well, I can hike back down to the waterfall, this really cool waterfall where I almost passed out at. I can hike down there and I can hang out down there, but I have a good 4 hours before I see my friends. So how do I want to break this up? Because I was thinking that they were going to get out around 8. Did I know that for sure? No. Did I know what pace they were? Did I know if they were okay? Did I know anything? I knew nothing. I literally was just throwing stuff out in the air and guessing and trying to figure this out. So after 30 minutes and getting done with being bit, I'm like, I have to keep moving. I have to do something. And I was super disappointed that I could not keep going forward because I wanted to keep going. Even if I didn't fully summit this mountain, I wanted to keep going just to meet up with them, to get as far as I possibly could mileage-wise and as high as I possibly could of elevation, just to get up there. I wanted to see the views. I wanted to see the things. And so I was really pissed that I could not do that. So will I ever travel or summit or anything without having the navigation on my phone ever again? Nope. Lesson learned for that. Never again. It will be with me on my person. Also, I don't care if there's 4 other people that have the same thing happening. This is happening. Because I do think if I had navigation, I would have been able to find them, because I'm very good at direction and navigation and all that, and I didn't have it. And if I would have had it, I would have been able to catch up to them, possibly summit. I do not know. But I do know that I had to turn around because I was getting eaten for lunch by some horseflies, and I was not having it anymore. And so I come back out of where I was at this boulder field, and I started to go back, and I'm like, if I pace myself very slowly, I can also take up more time for them possibly coming back down fast. They might be able to pass, like they might catch up with me, and so then again I can hike out with them. So I'm going as slow, like way slow, like slower than I even would like, but enough that where the bugs would leave me alone. Now, mind you, I forgot to tell you about this wasp, hornet, we'll say wasp, I think it was wasp nest. There was 2 wasp nests on this trail, okay? 2. Now, I passed both of these wasp nests on the way up and did not get stung once. And one of them was in a log that I did not realize it was in the log, okay? Until I came back, until I was coming back down. So as I'm coming back down the mountain, I went, I don't even know how far I was. I went a long ways, probably a mile or more, before I hit this wasp nest that's in this log that is crossed over the trail, and you have to go over the log. So there's like no way that you are going to not pass this wasp nest, okay? And I didn't realize it until coming back down. There is like wasps lined on this log, and I was like, oh shit, I have to go over. I'm like, I'm going to go over a different way. Because when I came up, I like took my pack off, threw my pack over the log. I just leaped over it. I saw some wasps that I was like, I was not even there. I was just trying to catch up to my friends, right? I was not even there. So I would just threw my pack over, put my pack back on, and I walked, and I didn't, nothing. They did not bother me whatsoever. When I came back down, I was like, realized that's what it was. And I hesitated instead of just continuing to move. I hesitated for a little bit, and I had way more swarming me, but they didn't sting me, which I don't understand, because every other person, which I'll get to every other person that I talked to after that was like, how many times did you get stung? Like it was a thing. How many times did you get stung by this wasp nest? And I was like, I got stung, but not there. So I go back down, I get across this wasp nest, and I was like, whew, made it through that without getting stung, which was so amazing. And I'm still headed back down, and I'm going as slow as I possibly can. And when I'm going as slow as I possibly can, all of a sudden I hear something. And I'm like, what is that? And I stop for a second to try to find my bearings on where I'm hearing it and what I'm hearing. So I start turning around to check out like where this noise is coming from. And at first I'm like, is that a dog collar? Is there seriously a dog up here? Like, what is that? And it was kind of like some clinging. And I was like, not entirely sure that's what I was hearing. And as I turn around, like maybe we'll say 10 to 12 feet behind me, there was 2 guys that were hiking down the trail, but they were like hoofing it. Like they were almost jogging or trail running, if you will. And one guy had a bear bell on his backpack, and that is what I was hearing, was this bell. But I stepped to the side, and I'm like, I am purposefully going really slow, and I said, hi, I'm purposely going really slow. You guys pass me, let them by. They asked me, how's the hike going? All the, just a little chit-chatty stuff, and one of them passes by, but they're like jogging. The other one passes by, and I realize it's a bear bell. Now, this entire time that I have been climbing up and, all the things that I've expressed to you with all of the, I don't know what you want to call them, trials or trenches or whatever that I've had to work through already, I was completely fine, like solid. Like I'm really good about listening to my gut feelings. I'm really good about, if I'm hearing it or knowing that there's something there, and I was rock solid, you're going to be okay. Like every time I checked in, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, felt nothing. And then this guy goes by with this bear bell. Wasn't even thinking about it. And then I was like, why does he have a bear bell on? I know why he has a bear bell on. I know why. But I'm like, okay, is that a thing up here? I mean, I've heard of it. I've never actually seen it. I've never actually been with somebody that's had a bear bell. So I'm like, so then a little bear seed was planted into my head, right? I brushed it aside and was like, well, at least he's clearing the trail for me as I go. Like just making it light and whatever and going with it. And I'm still making it down the trail. And I'm like, this time as I'm going down, I'm trying to really take in the trail. I'm trying to like look up, go slow. My plan is to go slow so my girls can catch up to me. And then we just hike out together, la-ti-da, everything's great. Now, as I keep going, I'm going more and more as I keep going. And I get to this. So as I was telling you guys about the washout, right? I was telling you about the washout where it's like gravelly kind of moving rocks. Some places are sand. And then you have like big boulders that are set sporadically along. So it's kind of like sand, if you will. Like you're trying to walk across this steep moving ground-ish thing unless you stand on these rocks, right? I'm pretty sure a wasp's nest was next to that thing. And I was getting dive bombed left and right trying to cross this thing and not fall in this moving ground, and it's steep. And if I do fall, am I going to tumble for a while first, And this thing would not leave me alone, but it was like in my face, like not even like, not even just like a little bit, like in my face. And I'm like, oh gosh, if I'm going to get stung, please don't sting me in my face. Like I need to see all the things. Right. And so I crossed that washout. Like I just ran it. Like I didn't even know if I was going to make it, fall, whatever. And I'm like, felt like I was sliding on ice almost with how much I'm like loosey-goosey all around. And this freaking hornet's like wasp or whatever the heck was like all, in my face and whatever. And when I got to the other side of the washout and I started going into the trail, thank goodness, it left me alone. So I'm pretty sure I was around the nest or at least close to it for it to be like that. And I did remember on my way up there, I had one in my face also. So I was like, okay, noted. Well, I made it past 2 and I didn't get stung. So go me. There was other things that I experienced on the way back that I didn't really pay attention to on the way up there. I was just trying to hike, get there, do the thing, right? I had to cross this bridge that was made with 2 trees, and you basically walk to cross a river and to go over that. And I went slower this time. I stopped in the middle. I observed the river, and then I started noticing like how high it was, and I was like, oh wow. I was like, it's funny when you are focused and you have your thing that you're trying to get to or complete or what have you, and you don't really notice the details, but then when you slow down a little bit and look around a little more, situational awareness about the things, and you start noticing more things, and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty cool that I did that with like no fear, and I didn't get into my head even noticing the details, right? Which I thought was cool. There was also this ledge after I go cross this washout and I go across this bridge. You go down the hill a little bit and then you kind of like curve around this flat part. And of course the trail is all over, up, down, around, all the things. But you curve around this one part and it's almost like you're right on the cliff of the hill of the mountain. And it was this huge section that was open. And I just sat there for a little while. Soaked in the sun, sat there for a little while, looked out, and I could look out across, I don't even know how many mountain peaks, probably 3-4 mountain peaks. I could see the valleys. I could see, I could hear the river. I could hear some waterfall. I could hear all this stuff. And I'm just like taking it in. Like I am literally one of maybe 5 people on this mountain right now. Who knows how many people are out here? There is no people. You're in the wilderness. You're totally plugged in. You're totally like, I'm totally grounded. I'm totally there. I'm experiencing the thing. And it felt so cool. So I stopped. I took a couple pictures. I took videos, of my view, which I mean, let's be real. The videos and the pictures never do it justice on what you see. It's almost like the camera can't capture the amazingness of all of it, right? You can't capture all of that. And I almost wonder if it's because of all of our emotion that makes us feel behind it, which magnifies the perception, which magnifies the view. I've always been curious about that because it's just never quite the same when you look at the picture, right? So I can keep continuing as I plug along the trail. I keep continuing, and I have one more washout to go through where it's like moving ground. But this one was a little bit steeper and it was harder to actually get through. But luckily I had no wasp, in my face. So it was a little easier. And then I came to the spot where I had that steep incline that I had gone up where I had almost passed out. And I'm like, oh, I'm all the way back here yet. But I didn't look at the time yet because I wanted to, slow it down. Like when you go down something that steep, it's going to take a minute. And I wanted to wait till I got to the bottom to figure it out. So I climbed down that and I go as slow as I can, hoping, that somebody else, my girls are coming. And I get to the bottom and I drink some water and I eat a snack. And then I'm like sitting there for a couple minutes and I take my phone out. And it's like 6:30 at this time, like 6:30. And I'm like, man, I really wish that there was some way that I knew of a timeline or something, because I know nothing. I'm literally, I don't want to say a sitting duck, but that's what I felt like. I am literally sitting here trying to waste time, and I can't sit for too long because, again, I'm at the waterfall. There's horseflies, there's mosquitoes and bees and wasps. So not like, and let me paint this picture for you, okay? It's not like they're swarming me all the time. It's like you sit there and then you look down and you might have one or two on you and you got to like swish them away. And then if you wait too long, swish them away, swish them away. So I'm constantly swishing them away. And I had this like blanket thing that I take with me on hikes that I can sit on. It's like a little circle blanket that I take with me. And, I was taking that and kind of like swishing it around like a horse's tail to try to keep all of these things off of me. And I was just walking back and forth and like kind of taking in the waterfall and just really trying to be there and just, again, take more pictures and all of the things. And then I start hearing voices and I'm like, oh, I should probably also, noted, I shouldn't just be in the sun because I don't want to get sunburned too. I don't want to dehydrate myself. And I have a limited amount of water right now. So I want to be careful with that, right? And so I go back up into the trees, but then I'm hearing voices and I'm like, oh, I hear voices. And I'm like, oh, it sounds like my friend. And I'm like, oh, it sounds like my friend. Oh, good. I hear them talking. I hear them. And so I got excited because I was hearing them. Well, then I'm like waiting to see. And then all of a sudden I'm not hearing them anymore. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, holy moly. Is this that thing where, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before, but how if like hikers get lost or things happen, sometimes they hear or see things in the woods that aren't really there, but it's like either their psyche or because they haven't eaten enough calories or maybe they're dehydrated. One of those three things happens, right? And so here I am thinking I'm hearing my friends, and it was not my friends. And I was hearing the voices, but they were not there. They were not there. Okay. So then now I'm getting in my head like, oh shit, am I hearing these voices and I'm thinking that my friends are here and they're not here because I have been alone now for 6.5-ish hours and I'm wanting to be with them so bad just to like enjoy this amazing experience together. And I've been by myself that my brain is playing tricks on me. Like I talk a lot about brain dragons and I talk a lot about your mind proving you right and like all of this. And this was a whole different level of brain mind games, brain dragon situation. It was crazy. So that was the first time that I heard that. So then a few minutes go by and then I start hearing more voices, but this time I hear men's voices mixed in with women. And I was like, wait, what? And then I look up the side of the mountain and I actually see people coming down. Now, did I question it at first? Yes. But when they came out, they said, oh, hi. And I was like, oh, hi. And it was a guy from England and it sounded like a guy from Ireland, and two women were hiking with them. And they came down and they said hi and they were talking to me, asking me where I was from. I asked them where they were from. And one of the guys was so awesome and amazing. And he was like, hey, I really want to lighten my load in my pack. And he's like, would you like some snacks and would you like some water? And I was just like, thank you, more please, right? Like, yes, because I had literally been running down to my water. I had a lot of snacks. So I was like, no on the snacks, but water, yes, please. I would love to do that. And I need it. And I was sitting there after that, I was asking him questions. Did you see my friends? I described them to them. They gave me a timeline of exactly when they were supposed to be down. And at the time, this was like 6:45, okay? And so when they saw them was at 3 p.m. and they were giving me a timeline of to the summit and when they would be back. So 6:45, my friends had already summited and they were on their way back. But by that time, they were probably in the same spot of the mountain that they actually saw them, which meant if they saw them at 3 p.m. and they met me at 3:45, they had 4 hours from 6:45 to get to me if the timeline and the hiking pace was what this man said. Now, was I wanting to believe that? Hell no. 6:45, do you know what time that is? That is 10:45, my friends. 10:45. That is dark. That is on a mountain. That is by myself for almost 11 hours. So was I wanting to listen to that? No. I was like, okay, well, my friends hike pretty fast. They're badasses. They're going to get through this. They're going to come down faster than they've gone up. So I'm going to guess they're going to be here around 8:30 because I was being stubborn. I was trying to make up my story. Plus 8:30 is still light out. Let's be real, right? So then I get done talking to them and they said, good luck. Hopefully you're not here for too long. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. Because I figured I had an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours left and it would be fine. They're going to be fine. It's going to be great, right? So then they go and then I get the message. Then I get the message in the gut check of like, of a question that was literally dropped in my head. Should I go with them so they can take you to town? Would I ever normally go with friggin' strangers into town? No. Would I just get into somebody's car and be like, hi, I don't know you. Can you take me to the nearest town? No. And I was like, I can't do that. They're strangers. I can't do that. They just gave me water. Okay. They helped me out with a timeline. They gave me pictures. They were talking to me. They were giving me all this information. Would they really have done anything to me? Probably not. But here I get in my own head, make excuses and dismiss it. They go on their merry way of hiking. I'm pacing around. I'm doing the things. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, how much longer? What do I want to do? I have more water. Do I want to go back up the mountain and meet them? Do I want to just go back over there? And then I'm like, I'm going to have to go past the wasp nest. At least I know where they're at. I can do it again and see, and then I can go back up and meet them at the boulder field and then come back down or meet them on the trail at some point. And then I was like, but I kept thinking in my head, what if I run out of water? What if I run out of water? And you do not want to run out of water because you start seeing shit, right? You're dehydrated or you have a massive calorie deficit. You start what my friend calls seeing the wizard, right? On the trail, which is not what you want. That's not what you want. And so I'm like, no, I've already gone up. I've come back down. I've done the things. Let's figure it out. So I'm pacing, walking around, exploring this waterfall. And it's a pretty big area. So I was like climbing all over the place, doing all the things, trying to keep myself busy, buying time, what have you. And then there comes another frickin' wasp. And I don't know if I pissed it off or if I got close to a nest or what have you. But that thing was aggressive. It was not leaving me alone. So picture this. Me, a crazy person, running around, yelling at a bug that is flying at me, stinging me, okay? This is where I get stung. This little POS stung me, and then he's like buzzing me and flying around and doing all this stuff, and I'm like, what? I'm just trying to like walk around and get away from him, and I'm like talking to him, like, get away from me, leave me alone, I'm just waiting for my friend. I'm like having these conversations with a freaking wasp, because really, let's be real, I was by myself and I'm just whatever. So I'm having this conversation with this wasp. This little thing stings me 2 more times and I'm like, what am I doing? That is it. I'm not going to sit here while this wasp can over and over and over again sting me. I can't jump in and submerge myself into water so it'll leave me alone. I don't have anything to get it away from me. And if I don't hit it right and, kill it right off the bat, then here we go. We're getting stung 20,000 more times. I wasn't having it. So I'm like, whatever. So I get my pack and I start moving because I know if I move far enough away from wherever its home is, it's not going to follow me, right? And it's already stung me 3 times. Maybe it's pacified. So right before I go to the trail where it cuts through, there's a little marker that says where the trail is. There was a flat, sandy area, silty area. And I took a big stick as this thing's dive bombing me. And I'm like, yelling at it. And I went to the car in the sand and I wrote my name on it because everyone else, and I asked those people that had come down, who else is up on the mountain? Who else is up there? Who else whatever, to see what the groups are. And he said, one group is 2 girls that are camping and then your 3 friends. And so nobody else was coming down except for my friends. Nobody else was coming. Now, so I wrote the note for them in hopes that they would see it, because in my mind, they're coming out by 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it's going to be fine. They're going to see the note. So I wrote it, and then I'm hiking out, which is like 2.2 miles-ish, 2.3 miles from where I'm at, because I'm done with this little wasp stinging me and buzzing me around and being aggressive and harassing me. I'm like, fine, I'm moving out, which could have been a blessing in disguise that I don't even want to know about, which is fine, because remember that little bear seed that was planted in my head? Yeah. Well, not only that, I'm looking up at the sky, and now it's like 7:15, and it's starting to get dark because the sun is now dropping over the mountaintops. And so when that happens, the forest gets darker first when you're in the trail. It gets darkest there first, right? Because there's less light because of the trees. And the more the sun goes down, the more it gets dark, until you're in an open area, right? It's the same. The open area is the lightest, but when it's also getting dark, the forest is darker because of all of the dark trees, right? So I'm still going into a darker trail than before because the sun is now behind the mountains, right? So here I go, walking into a darker trail. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned something new, or got some gems to take away that will boost your week. I release a new episode each week, so make sure to click that follow button to not miss what is coming next. If you love the show or want to share a story, send me a quick message. I love hearing from listeners. If you know someone who needs this episode in their life, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they would love you for it. If you are looking to connect more, check out the show notes for all the social links, my website. I would love to hear how this episode helped you and what you loved about it. If there's a topic you want to hear about, send that too. All right, ladies, now is the time to release your inner power.